was a past accident.
Trying to prove one thing, that he is the secret son of Prince Charles.
David Sebastian Keppel, his mother, I regret it all.
It all started with an unremarkable envelope. No royal crest, no wax seal. Nothing to suggest the storm it was about to unleash.
Oh God, I hate this.
Slipped quietly through the rear gates of Clarence House under cover of a gloomy, rain-soaked evening, the package seemed harmless enough. But inside was a handwritten letter, neat, measured, deliberate. No ultimatums, no threats. Just a single earth-shaking claim that could shatter the foundations of the British monarchy. I believe I am the biological child of King Charles III. DNA evidence enclosed. For years, whispers of royal scandals, clandestine affairs, betrayals behind palace walls, and rumors of hidden heirs have captivated the public. But this was no longer gossip. It was a ticking time bomb delivered in white paper. The letter didn't just rattle the staff. It sent shockwaves through every marble hallway and velvet-draped chamber. Disbelief turned to quiet panic as senior aides debated how to handle the potential crisis. Was it a hoax? A desperate grab for attention? Or was there truth folded within those crisp pages and DNA results? Behind closed doors, whispers grew louder. If the claim was real, it wouldn't just alter personal histories, it could rewrite the royal lineage itself. The timing was delicate. With Charles freshly crowned and the monarchy already walking a tightrope of public scrutiny, the emergence of an alleged secret child wasn't just scandalous, it was explosive. Meanwhile, outside the palace gates, the public remained blissfully unaware. The tabloids hadn't sniffed it out. Yet. But inside Clarence House, damage control was already underway. Experts were quietly consulted. Lawyers were placed on standby. Every move had to be calculated. This wasn't just about bloodlines, but about legacy, power, and a centuries-old institution on the brink of a new kind of reckoning. And as the envelope's contents sat locked in a drawer deep within the palace, one question loomed larger than any other. What if it's true? The letter's author had vanished just as quietly as they had appeared. No address, no phone number, only a first name, scribbled beneath the final line of the letter like a whisper. Sebastian. That was it. No fanfare, no plea for recognition, just a claim powerful enough to destabilize an empire. Behind the scenes, the royal machine sputtered into motion. A discreet team of investigators was assembled, handpicked and sworn to secrecy. Their mission was simple in theory, yet dangerous in practice. Verify the claim without a single word leaking to the press. If even a hint of this surfaced, it could spark a media frenzy the palace might never recover from. They began with the DNA. The envelope had included lab results, allegedly from an independent clinic in Australia, comparing Sebastian's DNA to a known sample of King Charles's genetic material. But how had he even gotten access to such data? Was it stolen, forged, or had someone on the inside helped him? The palace quietly reached out to its own experts. The results were sent to a private laboratory in Switzerland under an alias, away from prying eyes. While the investigation simmered, whispers of Sebastian's identity started to surface among those in the know. An Australian man, now in his 50s, who had spent decades claiming he was the son of Charles, and a young woman connected to the royal household in the 1960s. A claim dismissed by most, until now. Those closest to the king scrambled to contain the potential fallout. What would happen if the tests confirmed Sebastian's story? Would he be acknowledged, silenced, or worse, erased from the narrative altogether? One senior aide reportedly muttered behind closed doors, "This could be bigger than Diana." And as the results in Switzerland inched closer to completion, the palace braced for an answer no crown could comfortably bear. Long before the envelope arrived at Clarence House, Sebastian had been chasing shadows. Born in the late 1960s and adopted into a quiet suburban family in Australia, his childhood was laced with subtle oddities, questions that no one seemed eager to answer. His adoptive parents were kind but guarded. His birth certificate? Redacted. And family photos? Sparse, as if something or someone had been deliberately erased. It wasn't until his teenage years that the whispers began. "You look just like him," a neighbor once said, pointing to a magazine cover of Prince Charles. At first, Sebastian laughed it off, but as he got older, the similarities became harder to ignore. The eyes, the jawline, even his mannerisms seemed unnervingly familiar when watching the prince speak in public. By the time he was in his 30s, the coincidences had become a quiet obsession. He pored over every scrap of evidence he could find: old newspapers, royal biographies, archives of palace staff. That's when he stumbled across the name of a young woman who had once worked as a servant in Buckingham Palace, who suddenly left her post and relocated to Australia in 1965. Her name was withheld in most records, but in one overlooked column of a local UK paper from that year, Sebastian found it. Sarah Kellner, a woman who, according to birth records, gave birth to a boy in the exact month and year he was born, before giving him up for adoption. The deeper he dug, the more impossible it became to ignore. He gathered documents, photos, and even scraps of hair from family brushes, building a personal archive that spanned decades. Still, no one in power would listen. Letters to British consulates went unanswered. His emails to the royal press office? Ignored. That's when he decided to do something drastic. Sebastian went dark for over a year. No social media, no public appearances. Close friends say he was traveling, meeting with private investigators, genealogy experts, and labs willing to test his DNA against known royal samples leaked in obscure scientific journals or sourced through questionable channels. The results he obtained didn't just suggest a link to the royal bloodline. They pointed directly at Charles. Now, as those results were quietly retested in Switzerland under layers of secrecy, Sebastian remained patient. He didn't want the spotlight. He wanted the truth. But truth has a price, especially when it threatens the crown. While the DNA tests made their silent journey through Swiss laboratories, Clarence House transformed into a war room cloaked in silk and tradition. Senior aides, crisis consultants, and legal advisors convened behind locked doors, their phones sealed in Faraday bags to prevent leaks. The goal was clear: contain the narrative before it ever had a chance to breathe. Sebastian's name was never uttered aloud. He was referred to only in coded phrases. The claimant, the envelope, the issue. Every reference in writing was redacted or destroyed within hours. The royal family had survived scandals before: divorces, affairs, even death. But this was different. This wasn't tabloid fodder. This was a direct threat to the monarchy's legitimacy. The contingency plan was built like a fortress. First, they identified vulnerabilities. Who knew about Sebastian? How far had the information traveled? Was anyone on the staff talking? Discreet surveillance was deployed inside the palace. Trusted aides monitored their own colleagues. Background checks were quietly rerun. Even senior royals were briefed under the pretense of a security audit, all to make sure no loose lips could sink this particular ship. In the gilded private quarters of Clarence House, Queen Camilla was the last to be told. And that was no accident. The aides knew her temperament. They knew that beneath the polished pearls and rehearsed smiles was a woman whose rise to power had not come without blood on the floor. Camilla had survived decades of scorn, scandal, and public hatred. She had been the other woman, the villain in Diana's fairy tale. And now, finally seated beside the man she had fought tooth and nail to legitimize, her throne was being threatened by a ghost from the past. The moment the rumor reached her ears, the effect was volcanic. "Absolutely not," she snapped, slamming down the briefing file on an antique writing desk. The room fell silent. Her usual restraint was gone, replaced with pure, unfiltered rage. "This again! How many times must the dead be dragged out to haunt us?" Camilla is no stranger to whispers of Charles's past. She'd tolerated the rumors, the books, and the so-called heirs who popped up every few years like weeds after a rainstorm. But this felt different. This had evidence. This had momentum. And worse, it had Charles rattled. "What does he want?" she asked coldly. "A title? A trust fund? A place in the line of succession?" An aide hesitated. "He hasn't asked for anything. Not yet." Reportedly, Camilla's eyes narrowed. That made it worse. If Sebastian had demanded money or attention, it could be dismissed as a stunt. But he hadn't. He had only presented facts, and that, to her, was far more dangerous. She knew how fragile the monarchy was in this new era. The public was tired, cynical, and quick to turn. One compelling interview from a lost royal heir, and the institution could lose its already thinning grip on public trust. And what would that make her? A queen by marriage, standing on foundations shaken by a son that wasn't hers. It is said that the queen then turned to a senior advisor with venom in her voice. "Handle this, quietly, brutally if you must. But don't let this boy destroy what we've built. I won't be humiliated again. Not by Charles's past, and certainly not by some bastard with a pen and a story." Sebastian, now in his early 50s, grew up overseas. Polished, discreetly refined, and educated in elite private institutions. Though he never flaunted wealth, his life has always been curiously free of financial strain. Word has it that a mysterious British patron quietly covered the cost of his education. At 18, he was gifted a luxury car, yet no one could ever trace who bought it. On a trip to London, witnesses spotted him slipping through the rear entrance of a law firm closely tied to the royals. For years, it was all chalked up to idle gossip, until now. For decades, rumors swirled quietly about Charles's secret heir, a hidden romance that supposedly brought a royal child into the world. The palace staff vehemently denied it, while journalists steered clear, wary of the legal storm that could follow. Even the Queen, in an unusual moment of candor to a trusted friend, reportedly brushed off the story as nothing more than a fantasy people cling to, trying to inject some excitement into the otherwise monotonous royal saga. But just like blood, the truth has a way of surfacing. As calls for transparency around the monarchy grew louder, tantalizing pieces of the puzzle began to leak out. A retired footman recounted discreetly delivering roses to a woman who had clearly captivated Charles's heart. A royal archivist mysteriously vanished after allegedly uncovering personal letters hidden behind fake drawers at Clarence House. An anonymous tip to a European newspaper hinted at a shocking revelation. Charles's most guarded secret might be staring back at us in the mirror. Despite all this, the palace held its ground. No official word, no confirmation, just a firm silence and reassurances to not worry. But behind closed doors, tension simmered. Camilla's well-known jealousy reportedly led her to forbid Charles from even mentioning Sarah in private. When a close aide once asked if he had fathered a child before Diana, Charles's sudden pale reaction spoke volumes. Now, with DNA evidence thrust into the spotlight and a grown man boldly stepping forward to claim the title, everyone dared not speak aloud. The whispers have turned into a roar echoing at Buckingham Palace's gates. Camilla will hear these truths loud and clear. This heir's name may never grace history books or headline glossy magazine covers, but his story is finally demanding to be told. Sources reveal that the latest coronation marked a historic moment, Charles officially ascending the throne. But behind the regal pomp and ceremony, a deeply personal drama was unfolding. Sebastian, a man who long believed Charles was his father, sat in silent agony as he watched the king take his crown, while the palace acted as if Sebastian didn't even exist. That moment shattered something inside him. Haunted by decades of unanswered questions, Sebastian quietly began seeking legal counsel. Through exchanged DNA samples and lab analyses, the undeniable truth emerged. He shares a 99.9% genetic match with King Charles III. Yet, despite the overwhelming evidence, the palace has steadfastly refused to acknowledge Sebastian's existence. But secrets have a way of slipping through the cracks. No matter how hard you attempt to hide a secret, it eventually grows up and knocks at your palace door. For centuries, the British monarchy has thrived on discretion, silence, and impeccable timing. But this time, no amount of palace protocol could shield them. One crisp morning in Mayfair, a private law office received a sealed courier package, a genetic report backed by certified documents, independent lab approval, and a stunning revelation. King Charles III is the biological father of a man the palace has never publicly recognized. Sebastian David Keppel, the alleged love child of Charles and Lady Sarah Kellner, has been quietly searching for answers for months, or let's confidently say years. Those close to him say he carried the heavy burden of uncertainty for years, sparking suspicion but never offering proof. A man repeatedly told to stay silent, be humble, and ask no questions. But after Charles's coronation, everything changed. He couldn't take it anymore. A close confidant revealed the depth of Sebastian's pain watching the man he believed was his father claim the throne, yet act as if Sebastian simply didn't exist. The betrayal was profound, almost spiritual. Sebastian reached out to an elite genetic testing agency tucked away in Switzerland, a name whispered among royals, billionaires, and powerful politicians for its ironclad secrecy. The process itself was simple, almost routine. But the fallout? Nothing short of explosive. To crack the truth of paternity, the authorities demanded DNA from both Sebastian and King Charles. And here's where the story gets interesting. A shadowy palace insider, an ex-butler with quiet loyalties, smuggled out a single hair from Charles's travel comb, fresh from the king's own hand. The chain of custody? Rock solid. Every step was legally airtight, witnessed by two impartial observers. Meanwhile, Sebastian's sample was collected under strict laboratory watch, leaving no room for error. The verdict? A staggering 99.99% genetic match. No wiggle room, no loopholes, no doubts. Sebastian wasn't chasing shadows or clinging to fantasies. He was, in the cold, unbreakable language of science, King Charles's true biological son. When Sebastian's legal team finally received the explosive DNA report, they didn't rush to unleash it on the media. No, they played it cold, the old-school royal way, A discreet, sealed letter was quietly dispatched straight to Clarence House, addressed only to King Charles himself. Inside, the DNA proof, Sebastian's terse but powerful statement. "I don't want a title. I don't want wealth. I just want the truth acknowledged." The palace's response was swift and strategic. Sources reveal Camilla was abruptly yanked from a scheduled public appearance. Legal hawks mobilized. Phones blazed for 2 relentless days, not to question the DNA's authenticity, but to confirm their darkest fears. An anonymous aide described the chilling silence that followed. No denials, no outrage, just silence. The kind of silence that screams guilt. Behind the palace's fortified walls, frantic hush-hush meetings took place under lock and key. Camilla's fury erupted. How could this secret have slipped through so long unnoticed? Staff recalls Charles as haunted, not shocked. One insider summed it up perfectly. "I'm not confused, just horribly, disturbingly haunted." Outside, the storm was breaking. The report leaked, not by Sebastian, but by a whistleblower within the legal circle outraged by the monarchy's attempt to bury the truth. Headlines exploded across Europe and the world. Royal DNA, bombshell, King Charles, fathered secret son. Crown contaminated. Camilla's worst nightmare confirmed. The fairy tale shattered. Centuries of palace secrecy, spin, and stonewalling were no match for cold, hard science. The king had a son, and he was not Camilla's. From the moment the DNA arrived at Clarence House, the atmosphere turned suffocating, like a tempest ready to tear down ancient walls. For Queen Camilla, this wasn't just humiliation. It was an all-out personal war unleashed at the heart of her carefully curated reign. The first signs were subtle but telling. A charity meeting abruptly cancelled. Security reshuffled. Private dinners with Charles moved to opposite ends of the estate. Then, the eruption. Royal insiders recount how Camilla screamed for 20 harrowing minutes after reading the DNA report. She locked herself away, throwing crystal glasses against the walls. A longtime maid left in tears, unable to believe such raw rage. One whispered, "I've never heard such fury from any human being." She was unhinged. But here is the kicker. It wasn't just the affair. It was the undeniable truth. The child is real. The DNA is authentic. The whole country will soon know that Charles fathered another child. And it wasn't with her. Camilla, who clawed her way from mistress to queen amid decades of scandal, thought she had buried her nightmare. Public scorn, whispers of betrayal, the label of homewrecker. She survived all that. She won. She married the king. But now, just as her coronation loomed, the past stormed back, no longer rumor, but flesh and blood. A mature man with royal DNA, the media's backing, and a single interview's power to shatter her legacy forever. In a desperate bid to control the damage, Camilla demanded the legal team crush the story, deny the DNA, discredit Sebastian, threaten lawsuits. But Charles? He barely spoke. His silence was a deafening betrayal. Camilla exploded, accusing him bitterly of letting Diana's ghost ruin us all again. She slammed doors with such force the frames cracked. Security was ordered to guard her suite, not out of fear she'd harm others, but because she was spiraling beyond control. What stung deepest? Public sympathy was shifting toward Sebastian, calm, noble, demanding nothing but recognition. Compared to Camilla's tempest, he looked every inch the rightful heir. In a leaked audio, she seethed, "They will paint him as the rightful heir." They will make me look like a fraud again, after everything I've sacrificed. Palace insiders whispered that Camilla's meltdown rivaled the darkest days of Diana's legendary breakdowns, a devastating cocktail of grief, anxiety, and desperation. Gone was the composed queen waving from the balcony. Behind closed doors, a woman unraveling, haunted by fears of replacement, not by a rival queen, but a ghost, a son with blood ties to the throne. And she was ready to wage war to crush him. Meanwhile, amidst the chaos, Prince William and Princess Catherine remained statues of calm, not just for show, but as a calculated strategy to protect the monarchy's fragile future. Their serene composure was cold and deliberate, a masterclass in crisis control. William was shaken, but not blindsided. Rumors of a secret half-brother had shadowed his family for years. Whispers from courtiers, teachers, tabloids, but never confirmed. Now, with the DNA undeniable, the stakes were clear. This wasn't just a scandal about Charles. It threatened public trust, succession, and the monarchy's relevance in a world growing impatient with dynastic deceit. According to insiders, William's orders were clear. We do not interfere, we do not smear, we wait and prepare. His priority was shielding his children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, the future crown bearers. A secret half-uncle could ignite intrigue, shift public opinion, and unravel their carefully polished image. Kate is William's rock. Behind the scenes, she coordinated a media monitoring operation, tracking every tweet, headline, and video about Sebastian, not to silence, but to strategize. Public sentiment was tipping. Sympathy was with Sebastian, not Camilla or Charles, a composed man asking only for acknowledgement. Calls for Buckingham Palace to issue a statement grew louder. Would William reach out to Sebastian? Or wait for Charles to break his silence? Whatever their next move, one truth stood out. William and Kate had learned from history. They knew the dangers of silence and spin, and they wouldn't repeat those mistakes. All in all, there's no denying it anymore. Sebastian exists. He is real. He is royal. And while a crown may never grace his head, his mere existence chips away at the one who wears it. The monarchy prides itself on being untouchable, divine, eternal. But this story exposes their most dangerous flaw. They bleed. They lie. They hide. Until one day, the truth knocks at the palace door. DNA test and birth certificate in hand. William and Kate may salvage what they can, and the firm may spin their tales. But this chapter? It's etched in history. The crown's darkest secret has been unearthed. It is raw, undeniable, and royal. But just how will it end? Only time will tell. And that's it from us today. Until next time. Thank you for watching.